Okay, we should be live. This is a continuation from yesterday evening where I did a live stream PC build of a legacy computer. We're going to be focusing on legacy computers, specifically computers that feature DDR3 memory, because DDR4 is also expensive, but I have a feeling before I get to the end of this, I'm going to realize that DDR4 is really going to be the only long-term option here. Hey, how's it going? This is the most struggle I've ever seen of the computer. It is struggling so much. What are we doing right now? We're compiling shaders. We're compiling an Unreal Engine 5 game. Unreal Engine 5. With a computer, with a CPU platform from 2012. What is this? 16? No, 14? 14-year-old computer. 14-year-old computer. And we are utilizing SLI. So it's like, we'll see what SLI can do. This got me really thinking. I had to go dig through a whole bunch of computer hardware today. I was digging through so much computer hardware until I found my other SSD from 2013. My very first SSD, my SATA 256 gig Samsung 840 Pro. So I have that over there. The problem is the motherboard that I'm trying to pair it up with, it can't boot into Windows. I tried the Windows 8, Windows 8.1 secure boot mode. This is Windows 10 on the SSD, and it won't boot up. I tried it with a newer computer, and it booted up fine. So I don't know what happened. But the motherboard is this motherboard. So this platform, MSI Z87 GD65 gaming. This one right here. Hold on, I'll put it on the other camera. Well, let me get the other camera. Actually, let me do this first while we're waiting for this, because this is probably going to take a while. So, let's move this out of the way, I guess. Or, I don't know, get rid of this. Okay, so this is the computer. Look at that. Now, I had to fix a couple of things after the stream was over. For one thing, I didn't want the two graphics cards, the two GTX 1080 Founders Editions, to be right up against each other for airflow reasons, so I basically separated them back out, but that didn't allow me to use the high bandwidth bridge. So instead, as you guys can see right there, I'm using the Republic of Gamers, the 3-way SLI bridge, where the middle one is empty. So, that one... Got a subscriber. I gotta fix this. Hold on, let me move this down. There we go. That should be on the top layer. So the right here, you can see I have the solid bridge. That is not a high bandwidth bridge. And Nvidia control panel tells me it's like, if you use a high bandwidth bridge, you can get better SLI performance. So it knows that I'm basically bottlenecked on the SLI because I'm using a 3-way SLI bridge instead of the high bandwidth bridge, because this motherboard is designed for 3-way SLI, so I can't actually get the graphics cards with the correct spacing. Now, this other motherboard that I dug out of storage, so I do have this motherboard. Oh boy, that's way too close. Z87 GD65 Gaming from MSI. So this is an Intel LGA 1150 socket. So this one uses the 4th gen Intel Haswell, aka i7 4770K. So I dug that out, and I'm going to try to see if I can get that one set up soon with the GeForce 1080 SLI, because I have a feeling we are going to be so CPU bottlenecked that, I mean, even with the Intel, we're still going to be CPU bottlenecked, but I don't think it's going to be as bad.
Which do you think will have a better image, 4K DLAA on a 4K OLED or 8K DLSS performance preset L on a 8K screen?
4K DLAA or 8K DLSS on an 8K screen. On an 8K screen, 8K DLSS will look better. It'll look better. I don't think it's going to run better. I think it'll run well. It depends on what you're upscaling to 8K from. So if you're upscaling from 4K, I assume you're upscaling from 4K to 8K. But why are you talking about doing 8K DLSS? Oh, you're saying on an 8K screen. You said 4K. Oh no, hold on. Never mind. I misread. I misread what you said. So basically, you're asking if 4K DLAA on a 4K screen, basically native 4K, would look better than 8K DLSS performance preset. Performance preset 8K is what, 4K? So you're basically taking 4K and you're upscaling to 8K. I kind of think 8K, 4K upscaled. Well, see, the thing is, 8K is so crisp and so dense in terms of pixels. My guess is that 8K DLSS, so basically 4K upscaled to 8K on an 8K screen, is probably going to look better than 4K native on a 4K OLED. Now, you said 4K OLED, you didn't say 8K OLED, so I'm not sure what the 8K screen is, but I would assume that because 8K is so much more rich in terms of the pixel count, it'll probably look better. It'll probably look better than 4K. That's like, because I'm basically thinking of the question as, is it better to take 1080p and upscale to 4K, or is it better to take 1080p and 1080p native? I think 1080p upscale to 4K is still going to have a more solid, sharp image compared to 1080p native, if that makes sense. So I applied the same logic to your question. Basically, 4K native on 4K versus 4K upscale to 8K on an 8K screen. Because the 8K is so much more dense in terms of pixels, my assumption is that the 8K will look better. Because I would rather play 1080p upscale to 4K versus playing 1080p native 1080p, if that makes sense. So I'm just applying the exact same logic. 4K L Nvidia recommend balance M is for 2K. Well, if you're talking about 8K, I mean, you're pretty much going to be running performance preset all the time. And that assumes that you're using the 5090. That there's an assumption there that you're using the 5090 or the RTX Pro 6000, because otherwise the GPU you're using isn't powerful enough to begin with to start at 4K and then upscale to 8K, because there is overhead there in doing that versus 4K native or 8K native. Although 8K native is a completely different thing because it's so hard to run, so it doesn't even really factor in. But yeah, the SLI seems to be decent. I mean, it doesn't really scale linearly in games anymore because Nvidia basically got rid of it from the driver set, but it still works. Like, it's still enabled. Like, it's still turned on. So I have SLI. The way you can tell, the way you can verify that SLI is enabled is the fact that it says here, GPU 0 in parentheses link 0. And the second GPU 1 in parentheses link 0. This link 0 is the key word. If you have multi-GPU and you do not see link 0, that means you do not have SLI or Crossfire X enabled. So this is the proof that SLI is enabled and running, because we have link 0. Basically, the two GPUs are fused together. And you can see they're both sharing the same temperature telemetry, because even though technically they shouldn't be the exact same temperature, because they are linked in SLI, only the primary GPU's temperature is reported to Windows because of that SLI bridge. The second GPU's temperature is no longer reported to Windows. So you can see that is another way to indicate that we are in SLI. Also, this is a proof that this is the Founders Edition, because the Founders Edition always targets 82 to 83 degrees Celsius. This is the target temperature for this graphics card. So everything is working as it is expected to work. So let's go ahead and make this smaller. We are still compiling shaders. This is an Unreal Engine 5 game on a 14-year-old platform. So it is going to be very, very slow. You can see our CPU is maxed out. The AMD FX 8350. This makes me want to switch to the Intel i7 4770K and see how that would fare with the same test of games, or the same suite of games that we're going to be testing on this live stream. However, I ran into a problem earlier where Windows 10 will not boot up on my Z87 motherboard. I placed the same SSD into the newer Z690 motherboard, and that one, it booted up immediately. So I've got some kind of weird problem. I'm not sure what is going on with the MSI GD65 gaming. Maybe I have to clear the CMOS. I tried secure boot. I tried Windows 8, Windows 8.1 secure boot, because it's hidden away in there. MSI's BIOS from that era is not very good in terms of the settings, the amount of options, but I'll have to keep trying some stuff. Otherwise, I don't know what I'm going to do. I really want to test that old Intel i7 Haswell, but I can't get into Windows, so I'm not sure what to do with it. So that leaves our old trusty FX 8350 with 32 gigabytes of DDR3. Now, strangely enough, the motherboard reports it to Windows as 800 megahertz, but you all know that this means 1600 megahertz. 4 sticks, because we always run 4 sticks on this channel. 4 sticks of DDR3. This is the maximum amount of memory that you can handle on a 990FX platform, as well as Intel's Z87, I believe. Yeah, 87 and 987, both of them max out at 32 gigs of RAM. So we are maxing it out. 4 sticks, 1600 mega transfers is as fast as it can go when you're running this much RAM on a DDR3 platform. And it looks like we are finally done. The game is finally starting to load up. And let's go ahead and take a look at it. Alright, this is going to be with SLI enabled. We're going to test all of these with SLI enabled. I had to dig out a bunch of DDR3 for these other builds. We've got some Kingston HyperX DDR3. We have some more Kingston HyperX DDR3. The AMD Performance Radeon memory that we are running right now. And we have Patriot Intel. The Patriot 4 sticks right here. Intel Extreme Memory Masters, or Extreme Masters. The Intel Extreme Masters memory from Patriot. So we got lots of DDR3 ready to go, because DDR5 is unaffordable. So we are going all the way back in time to the era of DDR3. DDR3 gaming in 2026. And we're streaming on a single computer. This computer is handling the live stream, it's handling the game, and the computer is 14 years old. And we maxed out the RAM. So let's see if we got enough memory bandwidth to handle all of this. Games require have drivers. Nvidia removed that a long time ago. In I forget what year it was. It was sometime during the pandemic, Nvidia removed the SLI. The SLI profile stack from the drivers. So basically now all you get is the bare minimum SLI that you can turn on. And you have a couple of different presets. You have SLI Auto, you have SLI Alternate Frame Rendering Pattern 1, and Alternate Frame Rendering Pattern 2. Those are the options for SLI today. So let's do... What does this mean? Does this do Classic, I guess? This game doesn't have any cloud save since this is just an open beta. This is the game that I chose for the Unreal Engine 5 showcase with this super old hardware. Now we need to check the settings. We need to make sure that we're running the game at, oh boy, 1440p? No way. Actually, we can try 1440p since we are running an SLI. 1440p is the actual intended resolution of the GTX 1080 when it was brand new 10 years ago. However, because the graphics card is so old, it is now basically a 1080p or sub 1080p graphics card. And it is going to be limited by the amount of VRAM. So we have FSR because we are on GTX. So we're using FSR. Frame limit, I don't know if this... well... yeah, we'll do 120, I guess. See if we can even get close to that. So we're going to do that. Frame gen, we're not going to use that because that's going to cause problems because we are on GTX. FSR 3 does not support GeForce with frame gen, so we cannot use that. But we are at the mercy of relying on FSR because Nvidia has abandoned the GeForce GTX. So back to AMD we go. Hardware ray tracing is not supported on this GPU. So we're going to try, let's try, what does scalability do? Let's try low, just for now. It did want to default me to medium, which is interesting. So let's go ahead and do performance with low. Did it save it? Performance, no frame gen, FSR, okay. Let's see how this runs with an SLI. This game is actually very well optimized for Unreal Engine 5 title.
When the old prisoner broke his bonds, the foundling...
We're going to try to spend no more than 15 minutes per game, so I need to really move.
...and became a beacon.
Keep in mind, this computer is rendering and streaming and local recording all at the same time, meaning I am doing basically the exact same thing I would normally do for any of my live streams. The only difference is I am not using 4K because this GPU, it's not appropriate to use 4K for this GPU. So we are using 1080p and we are not downscaling. We're just doing 1080p 60, 1080p 60 record, 1080p 60 live stream.
You're not. You hatched here. But
alright, let's see what we can do here with the SLI. One thing I noticed immediately is that the Steam overlay at the top is not reporting the primary GPU's VRAM. It is reporting the second GPU's VRAM. So if I go to check the task manager, task manager says I'm using about 5.2 gigabytes of VRAM on the primary and using 1.4 gigabytes on the secondary. So let's see how SLI handles this title. So far, I mean, we've got some pretty below average frame pacing from the SLI. The CPU is also going to be a huge bottleneck. You can see the CPU is pegged way above 90% constantly, and that is going to become a problem. But that might be because we're also live streaming. But I have noticed that this CPU, the utilization is constantly being maxed out because the CPU is just so old. In fact, the CPU is more of a limiting factor. The platform and the CPU are more of a limiting factor than the actual SLI, because the SLI is 10 years old. The platform that we're using, meaning the motherboard, the RAM, and the CPU, is 14 years old. So I don't know who in their right mind would try to play an Unreal Engine 5 game with a 14-year-old CPU. But that's that's kind of what we do on this channel. So let's take a look. So far, I mean, we'll see how combat is, but so far the stream looks relatively
Go on ahead.
consistent with what I'm experiencing while playing the game. Yes, we are not getting 60 FPS. I don't know. I mean, okay, that was pretty bad traversal stutter there. Oh, the other thing that is going to be a limiting factor is the storage technology. We are limited to SATA SSDs. There are no NVMe's on this motherboard because this motherboard is too old. So we're basically unable to use direct storage, which means there's going to be tons of traversal stutter in an open world game. There's going to be a ton of texture pop-in that happens intermittently and far more noticeable than on platforms that have an NVMe. So no direct storage. We will test another game later that actually uses direct storage so I can prove that there is no direct storage support on this old platform. So we're basically on a legacy platform, and there is a ton of traversal stutter. Every time I enter a new area in the map, I can feel the stutter as it loads in everything because there is a lack of direct storage.
Come closer.
Yeah, CPU is maxed out. DDR3.
This night, Haros. He was once like any mortal.
That is another thing too. This motherboard
Driven
is
by the
PCIe Gen 2.0. Yes, PCIe Gen 2. Not Gen 3, not Gen 4, definitely not Gen 5. We are limited to PCIe Gen 2. So yeah, an NVMe on this motherboard would be limited to half of Gen 3 speeds.
purpose.
The one nice thing about the motherboard, though, is it does have full fat X16 electrical lanes, even though they're only Gen 2, which means that they're equal to 8 lanes of Gen 3. But what that means is that I'm still getting the full SLI bandwidth on my multi-GPU, because these GPUs are PCIe Gen 3, and the physical lanes are PCIe 2.0 X16, which is equal to PCIe 3.0 X8. So I'm not losing any SLI bandwidth by using this 2.0 motherboard.
You're more than a weapon, child. Find what remains of me.
What would be hilarious would be if I were to pair this CPU up with an RTX 5090 and see what a true CPU bottleneck looks like. But you can see the CPU is already struggling to feed the dual SLI GPUs. Oh yeah, all 8 threads are definitely being utilized. Oh man, if you could only see that task manager right now. Oh man, look at those threads. Look at that CPU utilized to the max. Constantly running 4.1 gigahertz on all threads. All right, so let's go ahead and close that. It's funny because we are getting like around 50 frames per second. So it's like playing on a PS4 Pro with an unlocked frame rate. Because remember, Vishera / Piledriver is kind of like the Jaguar cores in a PS4. So this CPU is kind of like PS4 era or Xbox One era gaming. So it's not like it's completely unusable, but it is it's old. It's old. But you can see, man, 32 gigs of DDR3. That's a lot of DDR3.
You may call
That's a lot of DDR3. Personally, when I used this computer all those years ago, I was running 16 gigs of DDR3. I never ran, I think at the very end of DDR3, maybe I was running 32 gigs. When I consolidated 2 of the computers down into 1, I combined the RAM and got 32 gigs, which is kind of like what we're doing now. But that was a different setup because 2 of these sticks, so 2 of the sticks that I'm using are my own AMD Radeon memory. The other 2 sticks were given to me by a family member at some point. Like, so I never actually had 32 gigs of DDR3. Like I had 4 times 4. So I had like 4 sticks equals 16. So I had 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, or 4444, which is what was in my Intel system. And this AMD system was always running the 2 Radeon sticks. So that was 8 plus 8. So I had 16 total. Running DDR3 1866. Because I'm running 4 sticks, I can't do 1866. I have to run 1600, which is what we're running. But 1600 cast latency 9 is still very good for 4 sticks dual rank. Which is worse, CPU maxed out or RAM maxed out? Both will cause problems. RAM will cause a lot of problems. CPU will just cause random, like, stuttering like this. RAM maxing out will literally cause latency issues because Windows will start using something called a paging file to keep things from, like, having to get closed out or shut down or terminated processes.
Keep going. We must get you to your...
This is a true retro PC. Yeah, this is retro. SLI is retro, man. SLI is retro. I mean, this motherboard is PCIe Gen 2. PCIe Gen 2. Not Gen 3. This is Gen 2. This is super retro. But hey, man, at least it's 32 gigs, because you know how I roll. I don't go any... I always max out my RAM. I always gotta have 4 sticks. I always gotta have the most available for the platform. This motherboard can support a maximum of 32 gigs of RAM on 4 sticks. That's exactly what we're gonna do. But for those who, you know, don't want to buy DDR5, and I don't blame them, if you're on an ancient computer, this is kind of what the gaming experience on an Unreal Engine 5 game would be like. It's possible that a newer GPU might get a little bit better performance, but I think we're very CPU bottlenecked at this point. Because you can see a CPU, man. CPU is like 85%. Maybe with a newer GPU, it would do better than this SLI. I mean, with a newer GPU, you could try turning on ray tracing. Although ray tracing would make it even more CPU demanding. So I don't even know if that's even worth attempting. Wow. Yeah, this game is fun. I think I might actually end up getting the full game. This reminds me of playing Dark Souls 3 on the PS4 Pro. Because Dark Souls 3 couldn't run at 60 FPS on PS4 Pro. It had an unlocked juddery frame rate that was kind of like this. It was hovering around like 50 FPS. 40 to 50, kind of like what this game's doing right now. It does make me feel like I'm playing on a PS4. How do I get up? What the heck? You have an old PC. Testing it will get better result if you kept 30 and used lossless scaling. Yeah, that's a good idea. But the thing is, I'm using SLI, though. SLI, if you're doing lossless scaling with a second graphics card, you cannot be using SLI. You have to be using the 2 graphics cards individually. See, there's a difference between having 2 graphics cards in the computer, so you could do lossless scaling with the second GPU for the frame gen, or the upscale, and the primary for the render. You cannot do that if you're running SLI. Because think of it like, to use a Dragon Ball Z example, Lossless scaling with 2 graphics cards is like telling Goku to render the game and Vegeta to handle the upscale. But you literally still have Goku and Vegeta. When you do SLI, you don't have Goku and Vegeta. You have Vegito. That's what you have. So you don't have, like, you can't lossless scale and frame gen on your second GPU if you're doing SLI. Because now you've linked them together into one giant GPU, if that makes sense. The FX series didn't make it to the laptops. No, no. It was desktop only. They used newer architectures for mobile. They used like their Steamroller and Excavator platform. They're APUs basically. It looks like we're getting like a 50 FPS experience in this game. And every time we go into a new area, I can feel that traversal stutter because we do not have direct storage. We're utilizing the SATA SSD for everything. Keep that in mind, guys. There's no NVMe. This is like old school SATA gaming. Very much like PS4, if you know what I'm saying. Because PS4 was 2.5-inch SATA. Well, that was cool. This guy tried to like hide around the corner. Do they fall? Do they come down? No, they don't know to do that. Yeah, this is SATA drive. This is SATA drive gaming. Now it is a SATA SSD. I wouldn't dare use a hard drive for like these type of games. No, you can't use lossless scaling properly with an SLI. You have to use the two GPUs separately. I mean, I could use lossless scaling. I would have to disable SLI in NVIDIA control panel. But I want to use SLI because this is a retro build, and retro means SLI. Disabling SLI and going multi-GPU basically defeats the purpose of it being a retro computer. Because back in this era, the only thing that you would do with 2 graphics cards was fuse them together via SLI or Crossfire. Okay, here's the save. So this is actually a very well optimized game. For Unreal Engine 5, think about it. We are playing Unreal Engine 5 on a 14-year-old CPU, a 10-year-old SLI dual GPU, and it is playable. Now, am I getting 60 FPS? No. Is the frame pacing pretty bad because of SLI? Yes. But it's playable. I mean, someone could literally play the game like this, and they would acclimate themselves to 50 frames per second, like it's some kind of PAL region thing, which is also kind of retro. But yeah, I mean, we're getting like 50 FPS, so it's weird. I mean, it's like right there. Is FX lacking certain instruction sets? It does not have AVX2, which is probably the biggest one that's lacking. It does not have AVX2. Intel's 4th gen Haswell, which I need to figure out how to get my Windows installation running on this Z87 MSI GD65 gaming, so I can use my 4th gen Intel. That one supports AVX2. That CPU is 1 year younger. That is a 2013 CPU. This is a 2012 CPU. So 1 year means the difference between AVX2 support and no AVX2 support. I forgot what I'm supposed to do, but I think we're going to switch games now. I don't want to spend too much time on a single game. So let's go ahead and I think it's... Does it save automatically? Oh, yeah. Cleanse. Actually, let's do an indoor map and see how it runs an indoor map. So now we're not in the open world. Yeah, it seems like the frame pacing is still going to be the limiting factor. It's like stuck around 50 FPS for some reason. But man, that CPU utilization though. That CPU utilization is frightening. What does this do? Oh, it's for some other thing. If I look at the sky, does it go to 60? Wow, it can't really hit 60. It can't go above 60. It's able to get to 60. Why is it stuck at 60 though? I thought I unlocked the frame rate. Yeah, I thought I unlocked... Yeah, it's 120. So I'm not sure why. GTX 1080 was my favorite multi-GPU setup. It was the 1080 SLI. It's one of the most iconic SLIs because it was the only one, it was the most short-lived. It was the only one that had a high bandwidth bridge SLI. Oh, what does it say? Am I supposed to follow some instruction? Oh, heavy attacks? What was heavy attack again? This one? Oh, VSync is on? Yeah, but the monitor's not 60 though. Okay, well now it's getting 65. That's weird. So the VSync in this game just means 60 for some reason, even though my refresh rate is above 60. The GTX 1080 cannot handle 240 Hz on this OLED. So it's stuck. The highest it can do is like 95 on at the 4K output. But at 1440p, it can do 120. Oh dear. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Why did they get rid of SLI? Mainly because of post-processing effects like ray tracing. You can't do ray tracing with SLI turned on. Oh man, do you see how it loads the stuff all weird? It loads it all weird because there's no, like, because of the SSD, like the lack of an NVMe drive. It's so bottlenecked on the bandwidth. No, it wasn't really micro-stutter. It was because of post-processing effects. It's because developers and Nvidia started pushing newer rendering techniques that were all post-processing based in the pipeline, which you can't really apply multi-GPU to that, so they just gave up on SLI. They abandoned it. Or they left it up to developers to implement, Actually, that's what AMD did. Because Nvidia tried to do SLI. Like, Nvidia supported SLI longer than AMD supported Crossfire. AMD gave up on Crossfire, like, with the RX 480. The RX 480 was, like, their big push for Crossfire, for multi-GPU. And then they just kind of gave up and was like, let's go MGPU. It's up to developers. You guys can do it. We support you. And that was the end. Nvidia went, they went from SLI to NVLink with 20 series. 20 series had NVLink. And then after that, 30 series also had NVLink. And then they gave up. So it's like AMD gave up on Crossfire in like 10 years ago. Nvidia gave up on SLI. Well, they switched over to NVLink, but then gave up on NVLink for consumer in like the pandemic. So like 6 years ago. Okay, well that is this game. This game runs, I mean, I would say it's playable. It's not an ideal frame rate, but it is playable. It is playable without too much, what is the word? Compromise on, like, graphics fidelity. Because the game still looks pretty good with these settings. So let's go back to the main menu. So quit out of this. And now let's fire up the next game. Let's try one that I'm pretty sure it will run fine. So this will be an easy one. Let's grab the low-hanging fruit while we can, because it's going to get only harder and harder from here. All right, Falcom's proprietary engine. You have a 7950. 7950. It's not 7950. It's 7990. You're talking about 7990, right? 7990 is the dual 7970. Unless you're talking about some other thing that I don't know. 60, was it 5870X2 or 5970X2? I forgot. Anyway, so let's take a look at this game. This game uses a proprietary engine. We're running 1440p. 1440p, 120 to minimize multi-GPU stutter. And, okay, let's just leave it like that. It's defaulting me to medium settings. 1440p, native resolution with some stuff, some super sample stuff turned off. So let's go ahead and leave it like this. And let's see what the game comes up with. Two Radeon 7870s. I did a live stream last year featuring two 7870s. Or actually, no, it was a 7870 plus a 7850. That was the cool thing about Crossfire. Crossfire lets you combine GPUs that are of different tiers, but within the same chip family. So, like, you could take those GPUs that you're mentioning, 7870 and 7850, are Pitcairn GPUs. You can combine both of them in Crossfire. You can do two 7870s, two 7850s, or you can mix and match 7870 plus 7850, which is what I did last year on a live stream. Yeah, those are cool because those have the Crossfire bridge, the rare Crossfire bridge, similar to the SLI bridge. Man, we are again stuck in that like 50 something frames, but at least this game's doing a little bit better though. It is getting like more consistently to 60. Although I wonder how much of this is because we're live streaming. If I wasn't live streaming, I have a feeling this game would actually be playable above 60. I think there's too much overhead on the CPU and the GPU because of the live stream. Because this game's not too hard to run. Look at that CPU. 102% CPU utilization. 102% CPU utilization. One thing I find hilarious about the FX series CPUs, these CPUs, when overclocked, they can dump so much heat into the room, but yet they still remain so cool. Like the temperature. Look at this thing. I can feel the heat being dumped into the room from the back of the case, but the CPU is 39 degrees, 38 degrees Celsius. It can run up to like 102% load and it only gets up to like 40 Celsius. That's the magic of the FX series. That's one of its many talents. And this is literally on a regular air cooler. This is not even any exotic cooling. We're literally just running a basic Noctua air cooler. And we're getting like 40 degrees Celsius with this much CPU utilization and 125 watt TDP. I'm streaming on the retro build because it's a retro build. Because it's that good. Yeah, I'm actually surprised myself that it's performing this well. Although I don't know. It's gonna get more challenging with the different games that I have planned to test. But yeah, it's playing Trails pretty good. This is pretty good. Let's go here, I guess. Let's just go here. This game was hard to run on PS4. Like, this game was hard to run on PS4. I remember PS4, it ran really tough. I imported the Japanese version to play it like 3 years early. And I had to play it on PS4 and it was atrocious. It was 30 FPS. They added some kind of patch to unlock the frame rate, but the frame rate still didn't get 60. It was so bad. The PS5 could run it at a rock solid 60. But no, PS4 can't handle this game. But this computer is handling the game fine. What's over here, 9th District?
Off we go.
This game engine is very scalable though. It can become, you can make this engine as hard to run as like Crysis 3, or you can make it as easy to run on like a cell phone. Falcom built a very good scalable engine because they got tired of using the Fire engine. I forgot what the buttons are. Oh, okay. 125 watt TDP. It does 125 watts stock.
Hey there. How's business treating?
I can feel the heat. I mean, it's not like unbearably terrible. It's not like 13900K levels of heat. But if you overclock it, oh yeah, it can put out a lot of heat. You can get this thing can dump 250 watts of heat into your room once overclocked. I used to have this overclocked. In fact, the funny thing is when I first booted this up yesterday on yesterday's live stream build, it still had my 4.7 gigahertz overclock in the BIOS settings, which told me that the RTC battery is still good. Although the time was off, which was strange. But it was overclocked to 4.7 gigahertz. You can see stock is like 4.1 gigahertz. I remember overclocking it to 4.8, but 4.8 was just too unbearable. The amount of heat was too much for the Noctua D14 to handle. So I had to drop it down to 4.7. And 4.7, it was way more manageable in terms of the heat. But this thing only, like, when overclocked to 4.7, we're talking 1.45 volts on the V core. And that's like a 23.5 multiplier. Man, that thing is pushing like 270, 280 watts. And the Noctua D14 is still able to handle the temperature. It still only gets to like 57 degrees Celsius with that kind of overclock and that much heat. So there's something about this old school planar technology, 32 nanometer on the CPU, that just, it dissipates the heat. There's not enough thermal density on these older chips compared to these newer chips.
It's Mission. I didn't know they'd be here today.
Huh, looks like fans are finally warming up to their new designs.
I don't know what this is about. Yeah, that 32 nanometer is a lot easier to cool than like a 7 nanometer or a 4 nanometer because of the heat density. And this CPU was using proper like solder under the IHS. So this was the time when Intel was using TIM. Intel was using toothpaste and TIM under their IHS during this time, around the FX8350. So the Intel CPU was harder to cool than this, even though it used a lot less wattage. I know that for a fact. I have my Haswell, my 4770K, I overclocked that to 4.4 gigahertz, and that thing, I could barely maintain the temperature with that air cooler.
Just finished renovating, so come take a look.
8 cores for DDR3 is insane. Well, I mean, it's actually more like 4-core 8-thread. Even though AMD says it's 8 cores, it truly is more like a 4-core 8-thread. And you know what's hilarious? Let me show you guys something. So check this out. Look at Task Manager. Even the Windows Task Manager declares this 4 cores, 8 threads. Basically like an Intel i7. Even though AMD has like 8, it's like 8 kind of cores. It's 8-ish cores. Even Windows says it's 4 cores, 8 threads. That's kind of hilarious. But I've always treated it as a 4-core 8-thread in my own mind. Like, so I personally think this is more representative of like an i5 with 4 cores, 4 threads. It's like an i5 if an i5 had hyperthreading, which kind of makes it like a quad-core i7. But it's kind of in between those two CPUs. So yeah, 8350. 4 cores, 8 threads. 32 gigs of RAM, man. 32 gigs of RAM on a DDR3 at 1600. Cache latency 9. 1.5 volts. Yeah, because 3770K had toothpaste. They didn't use solder. That's why it was so hard to cool. This thing, it's hard to even get this thing to like 60 Celsius. This thing can be pushing out 250 watts and it'll be like 50 degrees Celsius. On air. 6950. What's a 6950? You mean a 6960X. There's no 6950X. There's a 6900K. First of all, it's 6900K. That was the Broadwell E. Or you mean 5960X. That was the Haswell E. That would need like a Rampage Extreme motherboard. X99. That's DDR4 though. If you're talking like DDR3 Intel HEDT, that would be Skylake E X79. Not Skylake, sorry. Sandy Bridge E or Ivy Bridge E. Sandy Bridge E is 3960X 3930K. And then Ivy Bridge E is 4970X 4960X 4930K 4820K or something like that. That's the Ivy Bridge EX79. See, I know my CPUs. I know my CPUs. They're like inside my permanent memory. What software do I use to monitor the temperature and the usage? I'm just using Steam. This is literally the Steam overlay. You just go into Steam settings and you just turn on the overlay and it gives you the settings. I just max out all the options available and this is what it looks like. Alright, well this game is very playable. I mean, what's kind of disappointing though is because I'm live streaming, I'm losing enough. There's too much overhead on the live stream that I'm dipping under 60 all the time. Because I know for a fact that this game runs above 60. It's like 66 to 74 without the live stream. So the live stream is making us lose like 20. It's like 15 to 20 FPS drop because of the live stream. So that is something to keep in mind. This old computer struggles more because of the live stream than the actual games. Although there will be some games that just overwhelm the CPU, which we're gonna see soon. 3930K is a 6-core, 12-thread X79 Sandy Bridge E featuring DDR3 quad-channel memory. Yeah, that was a very nice platform. That platform would perform similar to this, except it would have quad-channel, so it would have more memory bandwidth, so it would actually outperform this by a little bit. But it would be similar in terms of the actual gaming performance. Because it's HEDT, it has a lot of like operating system level overhead. I don't remember if that platform used ECC memory. I don't think it actually uses ECC memory. Oh, the other thing too is people are probably wondering like, how are you actually using the CPU? I'm using the CPU with Windows 10. We're not using Windows 11. The first thing that happened when I booted up this computer was Microsoft immediately was like, hey, you need to update to Windows 11. And I'm like, okay, Microsoft, you do realize that you told me that this CPU was ineligible for Windows 11, and now you're telling me I need to upgrade it to Windows 11? So, which is it gonna be? Is it supported now, or is it not supported? Or you just want me to get off of Windows 10? So I figured, decline, stay on Windows 10, who cares? Don't introduce any more unnecessary telemetry and overhead on a CPU that's already overburdened. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's upgrade to Windows 11 so that I can go from 10.6 gigs of system RAM usage to like 20 gigs of system RAM usage out of my 32 gigs of system RAM. Because 32 gigs of DDR3 is not very common. Just saying. Why don't you just use Rufus to download Windows 11? I use Rufus for like Linux installs. I don't really use Rufus for Windows 11. Although like I haven't really installed Windows 11 separately in forever. I mean, I guess you could do that. Doesn't it still have to enable all the secure boot TPM stuff? Like even if you use Rufus to install it, isn't it going to run into a problem when you want to try to turn on secure boot in the BIOS and set UEFI mode and all that stuff? Does that work with this old CPU? I mean, I'm having a problem right now, guys, like with my Intel Haswell. My Intel Haswell is unable to boot up into Windows, and this is Windows 10. I don't know why. Like, I put the SSD in another computer, and it boots up totally fine in that newer motherboard. But with this old Intel Haswell, it doesn't want to boot up. I was like, man, now I got to troubleshoot this problem, because I definitely want to test the Haswell 4770K with the same list of games to see how much better it does. I still expect it to perform terribly like this, but I mean, compared to any modern system, these CPUs are going to underperform. Or they're going to perform exactly how you expect it to perform. But I don't know, I think that this is a decent result for a 14-year-old CPU.
Okay.
Does manually setting CPU affinity improve multitask? No, it does absolutely nothing. That would be completely useless to do when the CPU is already maxing out all the threads. That's a waste of time. Alright, let's go ahead and quit out of this. Let's go to the next game. I've already played around with that. When your CPU is already using all of the threads, using lasso does nothing. It just wastes time. Alright, let's try Katana Engine. Although, I don't think we're going to spend too much time in here. But let's try Katana Engine. I have a feeling that this engine is going to be so CPU and GPU bottlenecked that the game... I'll be surprised if I can play the game, like, at a playable frame rate. This one's taking a while to load up. Hold on. Oh, it has... Oh, compiling. Oh, boy. Here we go again. Although this one doesn't have that many shaders to compile. Man, I really want to test Haswell now. I'm like, I am determined. I am determined to stay on DDR3. I do not want to abandon DDR3 just yet. I gotta figure out why I can't boot into Windows with that Haswell. I tried UEFI mode. I tried Legacy plus UEFI mode. Neither one of them works. It keeps wanting to start repair. I shut it off. I connect the SSD. It's a SATA SSD to a newer computer, and it boots up on the first try, so I don't know what's wrong. I may just try this SSD with that old Haswell, because this one I know boots up on this legacy stuff, so maybe it'll work on that one. Although that'll mess up the Windows image, but whatever. Alright, this game is insanely hard to run. So now we've activated hard mode. So let's see here. We're gonna have to play this game at most at 1080p. The GTX 1080 cannot handle this above 1080. It's too much. In fact, it might not even be able to do 100%. But we'll try resolution scale. It's setting everything to standard. The default standard, we'll just try that for now. Let's just hope that it can do it. Let's see what this can do. Oh, is it stuck at 60 because the frame rate is kept at 60 or what? Hard drive loads. Hard drive loads. Those old school hard drive loading times. Alright, we're in. Oh yeah, let's see. 36 FPS. Oh man, this game, the frame animation is tied to the frame rate, so it's not gonna look stuttery, but it's not gonna feel smooth at all. Yeah, this feels terrible. Oh my goodness. the animation is slowed down because the frame rate is slowed down. Yeah, this is not playable. Whoa, 20 something frames at 1080p. Whoa, Katana engine. 26. Oh, I can feel the frame latency. I can feel the frame latency. Even just activating the camera, the whirr to the camera, the whirr, look at that. Oh, man, moving the camera around. It's so hard to aim. Sub 30 FPS, sub 30 FPS, 17 FPS on the minimums. Whoa. Whoa, it moves so slow. Yeah, this game is not playable. Even though it's saying above 30, it does not. The frame latency is so bad right now. VRR is not gonna fix this. There's too much frame latency. The movement is... Whoa, the judder. Whoa. Everything's moving in slow motion. It looks smoother on the live stream than me actually playing the game. I could not get into a confrontation with a ghost right now. Not with the frame rate like this. It would literally be fatal. Yeah, I can't... Oh, man, it's... If you enable variable frame rate... Huh? Oh, you can't even go above 60 in this game. Where do you turn that on? There is no dynamic resolution. There's no variable FPS. You either get 30 or 60 FPS. Wah wah. I don't think you understand. This is Katana engine. This ain't no RE engine. This is the Katana engine. This is the engine of the samurai and the ninja. This ain't no RE engine. Okay, well, this game failed. Hey, at least I could get into the game, though. At least I could get into the game. No, we're done. We're done. I mean, okay, I'll do one thing. I'm gonna try 720p. I'll try 720p. That was so bad. Even though it was saying like 35 FPS, it was not 35 FPS. It was way too juddery. There was way too much input lag and frame latency all over the place. It was terrible. This is the worst experience ever. Alright, 720p. How do you like those hard drive load times? Alright, we're gonna do 100% of 720p. Ooh, it looks terrible on this 32-inch OLED. It looks super blurry. Steam doesn't report the correct VRAM consumption. I noticed that. It reports the correct system RAM, but it doesn't. It's reporting the second GPU's VRAM, not the primary. The primary is holding the game's frame buffer. That's how SLI works. Alright. It doesn't feel any... Okay, it's like a little bit better, but the visual quality looks significantly worse. This is so bad. This is so bad. There's so much judder. The character is moving so slowly for some reason because of the frame pacing. She's not supposed to move this slow. it's like there's the walking. That was supposed to be the running. The walking is this. It's just something. Yeah, this is not playable. I can tell it's smoother, but it's still like I could not play this game like this. And even the camera is still god awful. Like, what is this? Like, all right, we're out. We're done. We're done. This game failed. Don't play Katana Engine games on 14-year-old motherboards. I don't think Neo 3 would have done any better. Well, actually, Neo 3 probably would have done a little bit better, but I didn't want to waste hard drive space on downloading Neo 3 because Neo 3 is like a 100-something plus gigabyte game. Oh, that's the other thing, too. Downloading and installing games on this computer, the CPU is a ginormous bottleneck. So is the SATA SSD, but the CPU, yeah, both of them are actually bottlenecks because it took hours to install these games. The Ethernet on here is a 1 gig, which is not the problem. That's not the bottleneck. The bottleneck is the CPU installing the game and the SATA SSD. The SATA SSD was pegged at 100%, and the CPU was pegged at like 95%. It's just like, wow. All right, we're gonna try Crimson Desert. Crimson Desert. Here we go. The infamous Crimson Desert. Oh, what? Oh no! What? It says, hold on, can I, how do I share this? Oh no! Oh! Crimson Desert, man. Crimson Desert doesn't mess around. Crimson Desert doesn't mess around. Unsupported CPU detected. You shall not pass. Man. As if banning Intel GPUs at launch were a thing. Now you can't play if your CPU's too old. No Crimson Desert, it looks like. FXA 350's banned. Unsupported CPU. You wasted your money buying that game. Well, all right. What else? Let's try. I guess we'll try this one. Oh wait, this one has to load up an installer. PlayStation PC SDK runtime. Wait, what? It took hours to install these games. So I'm not going to be able to install other games during that time because, I mean, the amount of CPU, it would take like 90% CPU just to install one game in the background. That coupled with live streaming and then trying to play another game, that isn't going to work. It's stuck trying to install, it's trying to start up a game, running install script for the game. Okay, please run. Don't tell me it's an unsupported CPU. Okay. Okay, we're gonna do... Let's do this one. Full screen. 1080... We'll do 1080p with the FSR 3.1. What is dynamic resolution scale? Oh, that's off? Let's turn that off. Upscale. We'll just do quality, I guess, since it's 1080p. Let's see. I don't know if it was ever affected by Meltdown Inspector. I know Meltdown Inspector was like an Intel CPU thing. I don't know if it was even affected. It probably wasn't because it doesn't have SMT. Spectre and Meltdown was a hyperthreading. One of them was a hyperthreading exploit. The other one was a speculative thing. Which, okay, it might be affected by Spectre, but it's not affected by Meltdown. But yeah, I don't know. CPU's so old, it probably never had the problem to begin with. Okay. Let's do... Wait. Oh, I don't have import saved. I thought I did this. Let's just do a new game real quick. Actually, you know what? Instead of playing the game... Well, let's just start a new game, I guess. Normal. Yeah, it's having a hard time loading in. I see the progress bar down there. This is Decima Engine. Oh, I forgot to check the settings. Yeah, it's 100% maxed out. CPU is 102% maxed out. Wow, it is so maxed out right now. It is... Whoa, it's maxed out. Look at that. All 8 threads, 100% maxed. That is maxed out. And it's only at 44 degrees Celsius. I can feel the heat coming out of the back of the case. And it's 43 degrees Celsius. I can't help but wonder if some of these CPUs, they might not, some games might utilize newer instruction sets, and if the CPU doesn't have it, it has to run it some kind of like backwards compatibility fallback, and that could also hinder the performance. I realize now there's not a whole lot of DDR3 CPUs that you can go back to that are performant other than like the Intel Haswell and Broadwell, because anything newer than that, like Skylake, is DDR4. So it's like the Intel 6th gen and up are all DDR4. So if you want to be on DDR3, you have to either be on FX or Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, or Haswell. So Haswell is going to be the best choice in terms of it has AVX2 support. And it's the newest one from 2013/2014, because they did the Devil's Canyon refresh in 2014. Man, that just tells me I really got to get my 14... not 14. I need to get my 4th gen Intel working with Windows again. I don't know what happened to it. I was surprised that it wasn't booting up. I don't know, something... I think I'm just going to clear CMOS. It has some overclock on there. It has a 4.4 gigahertz overclock. I'm just going to clear CMOS. I mean, this thing had the 4.7 gigahertz overclock. But I updated... Strangely enough, there was a BIOS update for this motherboard. Because the BIOS that I had on here when I did the live stream build yesterday was from 2014. And there was a 2015 BIOS. So I updated it today, and that cleared out all the overclocks. Yeah, I don't know. This game is interesting. The load times. We're not frozen. I mean, it's running. I can see like there's stuff happening. You see the you can see it's like loading. You can see the loading bar is going. So it's like it's not like it's frozen. This is what I mean. No NVMe drive. So we're having to load this off of a SATA SSD. Although I don't see a lot of SATA SSD work being done. Like it's 40. Okay, there we go. 40%. It's like spiky. And the RAM, we're now around half. We're using about 50% of the system memory. So this game is heavy. I know one thing about this game. Decima. The Decima engine scales with memory bandwidth and PCIe bandwidth. And this is PCIe Gen 2. So we are definitely bottlenecked on this PCIe backplane. And it's using a lot of memory. This thing is pushing now around half of the system RAM. So if I was only running 16 gigs of RAM, we would be in trouble. Because most DDR3 PCs back in the day were 8 gigs or 16 gigs. Barely anybody was running 32 gigs, unless you were on like an HEDT platform. RX 570, now that's a GPU I haven't heard of in a long time. I remember when people were buying that up from Fry's Electronics for crypto mining. Back in like 2017. Alright, well, it's, we'll just give it a couple more minutes. I mean, it's loading. It's not like it's frozen. It's just loading. It's just taking a long, long time to load. I noticed the RAM is creeping up in utilization, though. We may have to just quit out. If I'm gonna give it, we'll give it 3 more minutes. If it's not gonna load in 3 more minutes, I'm just gonna exit out of it and just move on. You had the FX 6100 with 16 gigs crucial back then. You were on 8 gigs for a long time. So my story was I was on 8 gigs in the beginning of DDR3. I went to 16 gigs during DDR3. I started DDR4 at 16 gigs. I went to 32 gigs during DDR4. And I ended with 64 gigs of RAM on DDR4 before going to DDR5. When I went to DDR5, I started with 64 gigs on DDR5, built a second computer with 48 gigs of DDR5 when they came up with those new memory types, you know, like the 24 gig DIMM and the 48 gig DIMM. Then I went to 96 gigs, and I'm currently at 96 gigs on DDR5. And then on Threadripper back in the days of DDR4, I was on 64 gigs on Threadripper, and I went from 64 to 128 on Threadripper DDR4. On new Threadripper, I'm on 128. I started on 128 gigs DDR5 ECC RDIMM, and I'm still on 128. So from my point of view, DDR3 kind of caps out around 32 gigs. DDR4 caps out around 64 gigs if you're on a mainstream platform. Although there are some motherboards that can do 128, they're not very common. So mostly 64 is kind of the maximum on DDR4. And then when I think DDR5, I think 96, 128, 192, 256. But realistically for DDR5, I think 48 or 96, or 48, 64, 96. Any of those three, but I prefer 96. I don't consider 64 gigs a lot of RAM if you're on DDR5. I think that's kind of like average. Considering how bloated Windows 11 is these days when you're doing multiple things. Alright, so this is not loading. I mean, it is loading, but I'm not going to wait like 20 minutes or whatever for this to load. So let's go ahead and stop this. So that's a fail. Just exit out of that. Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move on. You can see when we killed the process, now the CPU utilization drops back down. It dumped a whole bunch of memory right there once the game got killed off. Literally half of that utilization was the game. So I don't know what was going on there with the Decima engine. I thought we were actually going to get to see that game in action, but we're not going to wait. I don't have all this time to wait. So that leaves, there's 2 more games. So that one was a fail. Crimson Desert was a fail. Fatal Frame 2 is technically also a fail, because I didn't consider that playable. So far, only Mortal Shell 2, The Legend of Heroes, only like 2 games. There was 3 games failed and 2 games passed. Alright, well, that's not very good. Alright, here we go. Pragmata. RE engine. Let's see if this one can load in better. I mean, that would probably load. It's just I didn't want to wait long enough. Also, I was live streaming, so the CPU was even more bottlenecked. This one, at least I can see the loading progressing. You know, that loading in Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered reminded me of the time when one of my friends tried to play Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne, on an ancient Intel Pentium 2 compact, like office computer. It would load the match, it would load a Dota match, but the Dota match would take like 12 minutes to load. Everyone in the online match hated that guy because everyone would have to wait 12 minutes for the Dota map to load because of that random Intel Pentium 2. Intel Pentium 2. Playing Warcraft 3, The Frozen Throne. So I know what a CPU bottleneck looks like when I see it, and that was a CPU bottleneck. Yeah, no, this thing is a dinosaur. Now you guys understand why I say 3, 5, 7 years. Once the CPU is over 7 years old, it is an ancient dinosaur. This thing is 14 years old. This is twice the age that qualifies for a dinosaur when it comes to technology. When it comes to silicon technology, if the computer is over 7 years old, it's already a dinosaur. This thing is 14 years old. This is like twice the dinosaur. This is like more than prehistoric. This is like the age before the dinosaurs. It's like the age of the giant dragonflies. You know what I'm saying? I forgot what that age was. What was the age where like beetles and ants and stuff were like as big as humans? You know what I'm talking about? It was the time before dinosaurs. Can someone tell me the name of that time period? That's basically how old this computer is. Okay, frame rate variable, 1080p, VSync. Do we want VSync? Just VSync was causing problems with the, well, if I VSync, it's still, okay, this game is correct. It actually believes that it is 144 hertz VSync. Graphics memory is at 6.6 gigs. FSR 3.0 balance. Let's go ahead and just leave it and not mess with it too much. I want to get something that's actually playable for once. Let's try Paleolithic. I think Paleolithic. It was no. Single cell organ. No, not battled. Single cell organism. That'll be like Q6600. Although this is not that old. This is not that much younger than a Q6600. This is as old as a Sandy Bridge. Or actually, no. This is as old as an Ivy Bridge. This is equal to Intel 3rd gen in terms of age.
Okay?
Oh boy, there was some, I don't know what that is, texture loading or something. Like there was some initial load that was pretty, oh. I don't know. I kind of think the live stream is ruining this game. Like, I think if we weren't live streaming, this might actually be okay. But because of the live stream, there's just not enough overhead. The CPU is at 100% utilization. This is not good. Oh, man. See, like, the weird thing is the live stream looks kind of like how it looked when the B70 was exceeding 99%. But the difference was I didn't feel the performance hiccups when I was using that GPU. This, I can feel the stutters. And, oh, it's bad. It's bad. Oh, this is not playable. I'm gonna have to fix the setting. Oh, man. Wow, the CPU is at 102%. Oh, man. I can feel this. It's too... Wow. Oh, wow. Okay, hold on. We need to lower... We need to do something here. 720p. 720p. Here we come. 720p. 720p to the rescue. Yeah, 720p. It's still too inconsistent. I mean, it's better. Maybe it'll actually get better, though. I don't know. I can't tell if it's, like, loading stuff. Direct storage doesn't seem to be working, and I don't expect it to be working. Although, I don't have a way of confirming if it's doing anything in this game. I don't think this game has the telemetry hooks to report that. Yeah, no, I can see how it looks on the stream. It looks pretty bad on the stream. It's the same when I'm playing the game. Like, what you guys see is what I see. Yeah, this is not playable. This is gonna give someone a headache. Wow. So when they talk about game optimization, I keep thinking of, like, okay, how do you make a game like this run on the Nintendo Switch 2? That's where the optimization comes into play. Because if this was to become playable on an ancient hardware like this, you would need the developers to figure out how to do, like, memory management, queuing, and stuff. Because this is just not working. And you can see, it's not SLI. I mean, SLI is not the problem. This is a CPU bandwidth problem. It's a CPU problem because the GTX is at like 46%, 50% utilization. You can see it right there. It's definitely a CPU problem. There might be some kind of instruction set that this game wants to use, but the CPU's so old, it doesn't have the instruction set. Maybe it's AVX2, who knows? And because it doesn't have that, it's running in some kind of compatibility, like SSE2 or something as a fallback, or maybe AVX1, and it just that's it. This is what you get. It just can't handle it. It's just not designed for this game. The game's too modern, CPU's too old. Well, this is a good learning experience, because my goal was to show people, hey, you can just game on DDR3. You don't need to upgrade. Just stay on DDR3. It's totally fine. Well, this has literally proven me to be completely wrong. It's not okay to stay on DDR3. I really got to get that Haswell working, man. I need that Intel i7 right now just to see if it's like an instruction set problem and if AVX2 on a Haswell can fix this. Because I really don't want to abandon DDR3. I mean, I worked so hard to get these 32 gigs of DDR3 working. Oh yeah, you can overclock it to 4.7. That's not going to fix this problem. A problem like this is an architectural limitation. You're not going to fix this by overclocking it to 5 gigahertz. These stutters will remain. The game is too new, the architecture is too old. It's that simple. I have a feeling there's some kind of instruction set that's running in like a backwards compatibility fallback, and it's messing up the scheduler or something. I mean, you can tell. Look at the CPU, guys. Look at the CPU. Look at that. Look at that wonderful CPU utilization. Quad-core 8-thread. Per Windows Task Manager. This is a 4-core 8-thread. FX 8350. No SMT. No hyper-threading. What you see is what you get. Okay, well, that's not playable. Let's move on to the next one, I guess. That's unfortunate. Yeah, and that could be why, the utilization is so high. That was disappointing. I wanted RE Engine. That was a good RE Engine game, too. That one's well optimized. Alright, we have one, maybe two more games. But we're going to do this next game. Well, one thing I know is we're not done with GTX 1080 SLI. I gotta figure out the limits of the GTX 1080 SLI. We're so CPU bottlenecked that the 1080s are just kind of like, hey man, we're still good. It's not our fault. It's not our fault. We're pulling our weight. It's someone else in the chain. So this is an interesting experiment. Alright, here we go. More compiling shaders on a 14-year-old CPU. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. This game has received a lot of optimization over the course of a year. So I think this game will probably this game I didn't expect it to do better than Pragmata, but I think it might actually, strangely enough, do better than Pragmata because it is a multiplayer game, so that means that Capcom will probably go out of their way to make it more like compatible with a wider array of hardware configurations. Yes, this is the latest BIOS. Oh, QCC600 is going to do worse than this, man. QCC600 is like DDR2. That's bad. I have a QCC600. I could show you guys QCC600. The problem is I don't have any DDR2, so I can't get it to run because I don't have DDR2. I dug a QCC600 out of the e-waste bin, complete with an Intel motherboard. So I got the motherboard and I got the CPU. I don't have DDR2. So it's like, I would like to show the QCC600, but I don't have the RAM. This is equal to like a i5 3570K. Ivy Bridge 3rd Gen Intel. So 3570K is what this is equal to. i5. I mean, in multi-thread, it's more like an i7, but in like single thread, it's more like an i5. Actually, that's not really true. In multi-thread, the i5, well, it's kind of in between. It's a weird CPU. It's like halfway between an i5 and an i7 in terms of multi-thread. Did Gemini AI just figure that out by sampling my live stream? Because I've been saying that basically the whole live stream. I mean, we've been showing that all live stream. That it's like that it's not running modern games smoothly and that it's stuttering through games. Like there was one game that it ran. There was two games that it ran okay. Mortal Shell 2, which is Unreal Engine 5, oddly enough, and The Legend of Heroes: Trails Beyond the Horizon. Those, which is a Falcom proprietary engine. So those two games it ran fine. Everything else has had problems. Crimson Desert, it doesn't even start up. Says your CPU is not supported. Fatal Frame 2, terrible frame latency. So much judder. So Katana engine is a no-go. Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered Decima engine, it has like a 30-minute load time. So it's like, yeah. And then Pragmata, judder and stutterfest everywhere. Not even doing anything really, just moving around in the hub area. So it's like, even at 720p. So we'll see how this does. Temperature is right there on the screen. 44 degrees Celsius. This CPU generates a ton of heat, but it is so efficient at keeping low temperatures. 32 nanometers. The answer is 32 nanometers. Lots of surface area to dissipate all that heat. The CPU cooler I got on it. Oh, you want to see the CPU cooler? You want to see how impressive my CPU cooler is? You must have missed my live stream. We built this computer yesterday on stream. It was a live stream build. All right, since we're waiting, let's go ahead and show the system. Whoa. Republic of Gamers triple SLI bridge. You can see in there, massive cooler. Look at that. Look at that giant skyscraper with the dual fans. Oh man, big cooler. Takes up the whole case. Special secret cooler. Oh man, the secret weapon. You gotta cool that CPU down 40 degrees Celsius at 100% load. That's what I'm talking about. GTX 1080 SLI. 32 gigs DDR3. Oh, this is such cool hardware. It's so good, and it was so fun to use this stuff when it was in its prime. Now it's like so bad. It was so good and now so bad. Yes, it would. But SLI, it looks like on this game, the SLI is not really doing much. It's very primary GPU heavy. You can see the SLI because we have link 0. The proof that we're running SLI is when we have link 0 in parentheses. If you do not have Link 0, that means you do not have SLI enabled. You must have Link 0 in Task Manager to prove that SLI is enabled. It's using about 90% on one GPU and 11% on the second GPU. So we do not have linear scaling. GTX is... I didn't say GTX is going to the cooler. The GTX has nothing to do with the cooler. The GTX doesn't dump any heat in the case, is what I meant. Because, keep in mind, these are Founders Edition blower style. They're blower styles. So they exhaust all the hot air outside the back. They're not dumping any heat into the case. So only the CPU gets the majority of the airflow from the intake. The GPUs are pulling the residual at the base of the case and exhausting it out the back because they're blower style. I specifically went with this for that reason. It's called optimal airflow without even trying. If you're doing multi-GPU, you should be using two blower styles. That is the proper way to do multi-GPU and get the sort of temperatures that I'm getting. Next, you should run Crossfire. You guys want to see a Crossfire build? Okay, hold up. Let me do a poll. Who here wants to see... Hold up. Do you want to see a Crossfire X... build? This is multi GPU Radeon. Do you want to see a Crossfire X build? Regardless of how it performs. The question is, do you want to see a Crossfire build? Yes or no? Doesn't matter how good or bad the scaling on the games is. $290X Crossfire? I can't do 290X Cross. I only have one 290X. You get caught up in the Crossfire. What do you mean by absolutely Radeon? You want to see like mixed GPU? You're talking about like cross vendor GPU? Dude, I've been running cross vendor GPU for years. Have you not seen my typical computer? Like, my typical computer is always cross-vendor GPU. I either have a Radeon plus an ARC, or a Radeon plus a GeForce, or a GeForce plus an ARC. Literally, the computer that we stream on for Tech Thursdays has Radeon, GeForce, and Intel Arc, all in the same computer. I've been doing multi-cross vendor for literally the last like 3 years. It's this type of stuff that I don't do, like dual Nvidia, dual AMD, dual Intel. This stuff, like legacy Crossfire, legacy SLI, this stuff you don't see that often. Because this is like old school. This is literally legitimate like SLI is what we're doing. Like, this is legitimate SLI. You know how you can tell? What did I just say earlier? Link 0. Open up Task Manager. If you see Link 0 in parentheses on your two GPUs, you know you have SLI activated. Or Crossfire enabled if it's AMD Radeon. If you don't have Link 0, you do not have SLI running. It's that simple. You could have two Nvidia GPUs in the system. Like, let's say you have two 3090s or you have two 3080s. Just because you have two 3080s, that doesn't mean you have SLI turned on. If you don't see Link 0 in Task Manager, you don't have SLI running. It's that simple. That's the proof. Because it has to be enabled manually in NVIDIA control panel. You can't just like plug in two graphics cards and it's like, oh, I automatically have SLI. No, that's not how it works. There's a list of requirements for SLI. Crossfire is actually easier to do than SLI. SLI has some strict requirements in order to pull it off. It's not just like, oh, I'm just gonna put 2 GPUs in from Nvidia and get SLI. Nah. That's not how it works. SLI was a huge flex. All right, here we go. Uh-oh. The selected storage location. Hey, at least it's not complaining about the drivers. Because when I was testing this out earlier today, it was telling me, hey, your driver is too old. So I had to update the GeForce driver. And I was afraid that it was going to get rid of all my SLI profiles because I would have to go to a much newer... I was running a driver from like 2024. From like September 2024 or August 2024. And it was like, hey, your driver is too old for the game. And it's like, okay. And then it like closes the game and opens up some Steam page about how I have to update my driver. So then I went and did that reluctantly. And now it's saying the selected storage location for the game is not an SSD. The game must be installed on an SSD in order to run smoothly. Well, you know what, Capcom? It is on an SSD. It's just not on an NVMe SSD. It's on a SATA SSD because this motherboard doesn't even know what NVMe is. No, this isn't gonna crash. My computers are way too stable, man. My computers never crash. I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. Alright, let's go into the options. Let's check this out. Oh, 1440p. 1440p. That is the natural resolution of the GTX 1080 when it was new once upon a time 10 years ago when 10 gaming perfected was the slogan. Now, not so much. So we're gonna actually we can leave it. We can leave it like that. It defaulted to low. Interesting. AMD FSR, because the GeForce GTX was banished from the kingdom of Nvidia and no longer has access to the DLSS powers. So now it relies on AMD FSR 3.1.5. Ultra performance. We'll just go with this. I mean, it's recommending this for a reason, I guess. Hold on. Let's just go ahead and do the spec overview. So this is the computer for those that joined late. AMD FX 8350. It says 8-core processor, but it's funny because Task Manager says it's a quad-core 8-thread. RAM, DDR3, 1600, 32 gigs. That's a lot of DDR3, just saying. Nvidia GeForce GTX 1080 x 2 SLI. 8 gigs of VRAM per GPU, 16 gigs total. GPU driver version is whatever this thing is. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is GeForce 1080 is considered legacy, so it's not actually getting like all the enhancements that RTX is getting. It's just getting security fixes. But I mean, it's still technically getting updates. It's just not getting anything to optimize games. And then notice this. This is the proof. This is the proof. Direct storage is disabled. Disable. With no way to turn it on. Because we are not using NVMe. Direct storage requires NVMe SSD. And this is a SATA SSD. So, because the computer's too old. So, yeah, we're doing that, unfortunately. So that is going to create a lot of problems. But as long as we keep the stuff where it needs to be, like low, anything with the CPU we want to have turned off or minimized enormously. So, yeah, all this stuff, just whatever. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. Do not turn on frame gen with GTX 1080. That'll probably hard lock the game. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's see how this is going to run. The 8350 is not officially supported for Windows 11. So no, we're running this on Windows 10. Now, it's funny because Microsoft keeps spamming me the thing saying, hey, upgrade to Windows 11, upgrade right now, reboot and upgrade, download the background and upgrade. And I'm like, decline, decline, no, decline, decline, no, stay on Windows 10, stay on Windows 10. It's funny because Pragmata was a game that was really stuttery. I think this is going to probably be the same. Let's claim the login bonus. Okay. Oh. The Shining Storm is available till June 23rd. Alright, let's see. Well, we're getting about 20 frames per second. I don't know. This is basically the same thing that we saw with Pragmata. Only the character moves through the area faster. 17 FPS. It's not really good. I mean, it's like, yeah. This reminds you of when I tried to play World of Warcraft on a Windows 98 2nd edition computer with a PCI graphics card. Keyword PCI. Not PCI Express, not AGP. No, PCI graphics card. And it ran like this in like 2005. Alright, try to run it at 720p. I mean, we're technically already using a resolution sub 1440 because of the upscale. But we can try... We're already doing ultra performance 1440, so I don't even know what that means. We can do AMD native and then go over here and drop this to 720p. So now it's 720p, native 720p, no upscale, just 720p straight up. So let's see how this does. This, you know what? I wonder if I turn off FSR completely, just turn this off. Just don't do any upscale, because maybe that reduces overhead. Well, I can see the aliasing a lot more now with... Yeah, it's still doing the same performance, though. Unfortunately, I think the game... There's too much of a CPU bottleneck. Because we're in an area where there's a bunch of other players. This is no different from playing an MMO. So we are 100% CPU limited right now. It's hard for me to tell the GPU limits because the GPU isn't even at 99%. Look at the GPU. 67%, 59% GPU. SLI. We got 47% on one GPU and 6% on the other GPU. So this is definitely a CPU bottleneck. 100% CPU bottleneck. Look at the CPU. The CPU is at 100% utilization. 40 degrees Celsius on the CPU. If I don't see 83 degrees on my GPU, I know I'm CPU bottlenecked. Yeah, this is so CPU bottlenecked. Well, I thought I could run the Radeon hunt, the challenge quest, because I was reminded yesterday during the live stream build that it's available, and I don't have it. I never did it last year, so now's my chance to do it. I'm in no condition with this computer to succeed in clearing Radeon in under 13 minutes. That's not happening on this computer. This is just not gonna happen. That would be like telling someone to go 30-0 on CS2 with this computer. That ain't happening. It's just not gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, no. So, yeah. It is what it is. So, unfortunately, this DDR3 computer is a bust. It failed. We had 2 games that were playable out of, what, 7 games? So 2 out of 7 passed, and the rest all... Like, I consider this a fail. This visual quality with this frame rate, this is a fail. I'll do one more thing. I'll leave the area, the MMO area, go to a single-player area, and see if it actually performs better. But this is basically a fail. The lack of direct storage is killing the performance. Alright, let's see. How does it look once we're loaded in? Well, the frame is more stable compared to where the other human players were, but it's still not good. Like, the visual quality is just not good. Like, just look at this. I couldn't do an actual hunt like this. This is... Although, since we're CPU bound, I just thought of something. Since we're CPU bound, what happens if we try to play the game at 1440p? Now the GPU is at 100%. It's going to 100% GPU, and the CPU dropped to like 80%, but now we're hitting bottlenecks everywhere on all sides. Oh man, 1080 SLI is like, whoa, all of a sudden I can feel the spiritual pressure. Oh, this is so heavy. This game got super heavy all of a sudden. What happened? What happened? And the 8350 is like, hey, it ain't my fault. Now you gotta do work too. But look at this. Now we got bottlenecks everywhere. GPU bottleneck, CPU bottleneck, back and forth bottleneck, input lag, traversal stutter, inbound, no direct storage, textures going straight into memory, filling up all that DDR3. Whoa, this game is impressive in terms of its demand. Last year, this game was one of the most demanding games. This was literally the crisis of 2025. However, they did optimize the game significantly at the end of the year and early this year. So it's not actually as hard as it was to run a year ago, but it is still very, very demanding, as you guys can see. Well, I mean, a 14-year-old computer, I mean, it's not crashing, but it's not performing. So it is what it is at the end of the day. But yeah, really nice temperatures. 40 degrees Celsius on the CPU. Lots of traversal stutter. That's all traversal stutter due to no direct storage right there, because the game is literally having to fill in the town assets from the into the DDR3 without any sort of GPU decompression of textures. So everything is going in like manually right now, and that's why it is what it is. Wow. This is an impressive... This is like a really cool exercise, academic exercise, to see what happens when you run modern games on, like, dinosaur hardware. We will... This is not the end of the 1080 SLI. We will be live streaming with the 1080 SLI again with another computer. I already have lots of ideas now on how to follow up on this. But what we are done with, we're definitely done with the 8350. The 8350 applied for the job, and unfortunately, we've got better candidates, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You did good in the interview, but unfortunately, we've got some other candidates. Can the integrated Radeon on 9950X3D outperform the SLI? No. No, it cannot. It cannot. The integrated graphics on the 9950X3D2 is nothing to write home about. However, the APU could
I was the
do.
first adapter of 4K with a Dell monitor around 12 years ago. Those existed even before 1440p became a thing, so I skipped the entire 1440p lineup.
Wait, you skipped the entire 1440p lineup? So you went from 1080p to 4K 12 years ago? Wait, hold on a second. That means 12 years ago was like 2014. That means the best GPU you could be running at the time was the original GTX Titan. $1,000 GTX Titan based off of Kepler architecture, which is 2 generations older than what I'm running right now. That's like 700 series Nvidia, like a GTX 780, GTX 780 and GTX 780 Ti were the best GPUs from Nvidia back then, and the best AMD GPU 14 years ago was the 290X in Crossfire. And the funny thing is that 2014 was the year of crypto. Like, everyone was buying up Radeon GPUs for crypto back then. I remember 290X, 280X, 7970, 7950, 7870. Everyone was buying up, even like the old very long word instruction. The Radeon HD 6000, Radeon HD 5000. People were buying up those GPUs for crypto. It was called Litecoin mining. 12 years ago, Litecoin mining. Bitcoin and Litecoin. This predates Ethereum, by the way. Ethereum was later. Ethereum was like 2017. But if we're talking like 12 years ago, that would have been like Litecoin mining era. 2014. 2014 equals Litecoin mining. So wait, you were using, what were you using then? You must have been using either 780 SLI or 780 Ti SLI or Titan SLI. No, Titan X is not what we're talking about. We're talking about the original Titan. Titan X was Maxwell, which was early 2015 or the very end of 2014. So basically almost 12 years ago, not quite. GTX Titan cost $1,000. It was the very first consumer class $1,000 graphics card, and it launched in 2013. GTX Titan. Kepler. The original GTX Titan. You used SLI every generation up to 1080 Ti. So that means you went with SLI up until 2017. 2017 was 1080. A lot of people seem to forget 1080 Ti is the same age as Zen 1. Ryzen 1st gen and 1080 Ti launched the exact same week. There were people who literally went and bought like 1080 Ti and paired it up with the new Ryzen. I mean, it depends. Like, some people were just building the Ryzen, some people were just getting 1080 Ti, but there were some people that were doing both. Because they wanted that big multi-thread with that 1080 Ti and the 1080 Ti SLI. Alright, well, this is not playable. I don't consider this playable. What's funny is this is 1440p, so, and we are GPU and CPU bottleneck. This is like CPU and GPU bottleneck. So let's make it only CPU bottleneck. Remove the GPU bottleneck. Okay, now we're only CPU bottlenecked. See, notice how the frames are a lot, like, smoother, and more consistent, because we eliminated most of the GPU bottleneck. Actually, it's still 100% though. Oh no, this is weird. This game is still very CPU and GPU, but I would say it's, in general, it tends to be more CPU demanding than GPU demanding most of the time. So what older hardware do you still want to get? What do you mean, what older hardware do I want to get? I don't get any older hardware. I don't understand what the question. You're asking me if I'm going to buy older... I don't buy older hardware. You think I bought this hardware recently? Dude, I've had this hardware since it was brand new. This has been in my collection. I don't sell my old hardware. That's the difference between me and most enthusiasts. Anything that I buy stays with me basically for life. That's why I only choose things that are good. That will stand the test of time. I've had this 8350 since it was brand new in 2012. I've had these two 1080s since they were brand new in 2016. Now, occasionally, people will give me hardware, like I explained at the beginning of the stream. Half of the memory that I'm using was literally given to me for free. But the other half, I bought a long time ago with this computer, for building this computer, the Radeon memory. Might have to relaunch the game. Why? It didn't tell me I have to relaunch the game. Basically, if I have the hardware, I can test the hardware. If I don't have the hardware, I'm not going to go out of my way to buy the hardware if it's old hardware, because I don't do that. That's not something I do. I buy new hardware. I don't buy old hardware. It depends on what it is. I shouldn't say that, because I will buy certain things that are old. The best example I can give you are like 60 gigabyte backwards compatible PS3s. Like 20 gig PS3s, 60 gig PS3s. I wouldn't have a problem buying those. Or, you know, like AVR stuff, like that 60 CD changer that I have behind me. Although I don't think I would go out of my way to buy one of those. The one behind me was literally given to me by my uncle. And it broke down recently, and I had to fix it. The conveyor belt, the carousel belt, this belt right here, actually got tangled in the unit, and the CD changer stopped spinning. So I had to actually open up the whole unit and replace the belt. That was a weekend project, but yeah, no, I typically don't buy old hardware. Unless it's some kind of collector's thing, like a 20 gig PS3. I'm not gonna go buy old graphics cards. No, this stuff, I've purchased this stuff when it was new. Like these 1080s, for example. Because people, man, there were people who came into yesterday's live stream that were like, where'd you get the 10? How'd you get those? How'd you get those? How'd you get those Founders Edition 1080s? It's called, I bought them from Best Buy 10 years ago. I typically don't buy used hardware. But I also don't sell used hardware either. I mean, sometimes I will. It depends on really what it is. If I have enough excess of certain parts, then yeah, I might sell some of the hardware, but it's rare. We'll just say that it's rare when it happens. But yeah, in terms of buying used hardware, I don't really do that. Not computer parts. That's why I don't have the ability to show you guys the Q6600. Even though I have one, I dug the Q6600 plus the Intel motherboard out of an e-waste bin once. But it had no RAM, so there was no way for me to turn it on and see if it actually worked. I still have it, though. Just in case I get DDR2 someday, who knows? Maybe I'll do a super retro build with a Q6600. That's one CPU that the 8350 does actually outperform, though. All right, so I mean, we're kind of done, guys. Like, this was the last game. This was the last game that I had. I don't have a bunch of games installed on here because this old SSD is kind of small, and it's a SATA SSD. So, it took me like 4 hours to install 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. Just because it was so bottlenecked. What's your most satisfying NVIDIA GPU purchase? That's a really good question. Probably these. Probably the two 1080 Founders Editions. These are my favorite Nvidia reference designs. I am not satisfied buying a 5090, I'll tell you that. I feel like I overpaid for the 5090 because I bought the Asus Astral more than was it like a year ago now? And the 5090 was definitely not good value, so I am not satisfied buying that GPU. Same thing with the, I guess, yeah, to answer your question, I would say the 1080 SLI is my most satisfying Nvidia GPU buying experience. At the time, I felt like I was getting my money's worth. The only other GPU that has been able to manage to get close to feeling the same as that is when I bought the Founders Edition 4090. The 4090 Founders Edition, I bought it from Best Buy for $15.99. So I paid MSRP for a 4090 Founders Edition from Best Buy, and that was probably like the runner-up in terms of like, yeah, it's a ton of money though, but it is very performant. So yeah, that'll be number 2. So the GTX 1080 is number 1. The 4090 is probably number 2. But all the other ones, I guess, you know, I also did like the GTX 970 that I purchased. That was actually my very first Nvidia GPU. So now I guess we come to the end of the live stream. So let's open up Paint. So let me show you. I'll just do this here. Let's put this over here, I guess. Where is it? Why is it so big? Oh, because this is like a 1080p window, and this is a 1440p monitor. Oh boy, that's massive. Why is this, like, it's still so big? What the heck? I don't understand. Okay, there we go. Now it's, like, too small. Okay, so my GeForce buying history, I guess, is as follows. Oh my goodness, even Paint is lagging. Come on. Okay. GTX 970. This is my very first Nvidia graphics card ever. GTX 9, or okay, we'll just give the names. MSI 100 million edition GTX 970. That is the very first Nvidia. That might be either my third or second most satisfying Nvidia GPU purchase. Next, Nvidia Founders Edition GTX 1080. So this was, yeah, so that was the first one, then this one. Then the next GPU was what? Nvidia Founders Edition RTX 3090 Ti. Or, what was it? That one? RTX 3080 Ti. Yeah, 1080, then 3080 Ti, then 3090 Ti, then Nvidia Founders Edition RTX 4090 Nvidia Founders Edition RTX 4080 Super, then Asus Astral RTX 5090. OC or whatever the name of that thing is, the Astral. The stupid thing with the power connector that could melt, but it has the pin monitoring. So these are all my Nvidia GPUs. Those are all my Nvidia GPUs. There's 2 of these. Duplicates. So you guys can see, the reason why I make a big deal about 1080 is because whenever I want to do a retro build, like what we're doing right now, the 1080 is the only one that I have that I can do SLI. Because this is the only one that I have 2. I don't have 2 of any other Nvidia graphics card. So I could do a ton of like AMD Crossfire setups because I've got like a bunch of different... You can mix and match with AMD. You cannot mix and match. Basically, did we ever... I think we went over this in like a previous stream last year. But it's basically like how to SLI. How to SLI. Step 1. Have 2 identical GeForce GPUs. They have to be the same, i.e. 2 1080s. You cannot mix and match. You cannot have like a 3090 and a 3080. That's not allowed. You cannot do a 4090 and a 4080 or a 4090 and a 5090. That will not work. It will never work. Must be identical GeForce GPUs. You must have the license key from Nvidia. That's like the other step. Now this is a very cryptic step because the true tech enthusiasts, when they read this, they know exactly what I'm referring to. The people who have no idea how to enable SLI, but they desire to enable SLI, they're probably reading this and like, what? How do you get the license key from Nvidia? Can you download it from somewhere? Okay, what this means is you must have a motherboard that includes the SLI license key. That's the other way of writing this, which means only certain select motherboards include an SLI license. The motherboard that we're using right now for this live stream is one of those motherboards that has the SLI license key. So, once SLI was killed off, you can't do it. So basically, you're kind of stuck. It's like, the last platforms to support SLI were AM4, which is not what I'm using, but it is the last AMD platform to support SLI, and Z690. Z690, which means Intel 12th gen, 13th gen, and 14th gen, oddly enough, with BIOS updates, actually have access to Nvidia SLI on very, very few and very extremely expensive motherboards that are incredibly rare and hard to find. A good example is the Z690 MSI Godlike. These are the type of motherboards that have SLI. This is probably the last motherboard to actually pay for the Nvidia license key to unlock and enable SLI. So very, very few motherboards have support for SLI today. What did I say a few minutes ago? Only very rare and very expensive motherboards have SLI support when it comes to modern day motherboard support. So yeah, if you don't have a $1,000 motherboard, you basically forget about any hope of daring to try to run SLI. So you have to have a motherboard that includes the license key. So yeah, that's AM4 for AMD and Z690 for Intel. There are no Z790 motherboards, 0, that have support for SLI. There are no Z890 motherboards that have support for SLI. Even if they're $1,000, they don't have SLI support. Same thing with AM5. As far as I know, I am not aware of any AM5 motherboard that supports SLI. The last chipset was Z690, and the last AMD was X570. X570 for AM4 and Z690 for LGA 1700 have very few, very expensive motherboards that have support for SLI. So this is another reason why SLI is extremely rare and basically non-existent in today's world. So that is the reason why most of the time that you guys are going to see me feature SLI, I'm going to be using an older computer. So it's either going to be a retro build like what we're using right now, or it's going to be the last motherboard, the most modern motherboard that I have that has the license key included. And we will be showcasing SLI on a newer platform in the near future. I can guarantee that. Because we are definitely not done with this SLI stuff. So how to Crossfire X. How to Crossfire X. This is the AMD, this is the Radeon one. You have to have 2 GPUs of the same chip. The same chip. That is very different from Nvidia's requirement of 2 identical. Identical, same chip is different. This means, i.e., 2 Navi 21s. Or 2, it's like 2 Vega, or 2 Polaris. So it's a lot more lenient in what you can do. That means you can do RX 480 plus RX 570 equals Crossfire X. Another example, Vega 64 plus Vega 56. That is allowed. That equals Crossfire X. That will work. Similarly, you can do RX 6800 XT plus RX 6950 XT. That will also work with Crossfire X. So this is also allowed. In fact, you can even do RX 6800 plus RX 6950 XT, and that will work. That is a valid Crossfire X. For older platforms, HD 7970 plus HD 7950. You could you can do HD 7970 plus HD 7970. So you can always do 2 identical GPUs. But the cool thing about Crossfire is it allows you to mix and match GPUs that are technically not the same. So it's like the full enabled Vega plus the cut down Vega. It allows you to actually do that. The full biggest big Navi plus big Navi still is allowed. So it allows you to do that. So it's a lot more flexible in terms of the combinations. No license key required. So a lot more motherboards allow Crossfire X. It is far more common to see a motherboard support Crossfire X compared to SLI, because Nvidia charges a license fee to the motherboard manufacturer if they want to offer SLI. That is the reason why the SLI motherboards typically are more expensive, and that is why toward the end of the SLI lifespan, only the most expensive motherboards offered SLI, because the motherboard manufacturers basically shove that cost for the license down to the consumer. So All right, so Crossfire X, much easier to do, far more flexible, no license key required. It does requires AMD certification for the motherboard. So this is different from the license. So they don't charge the license fee, but they do have to approve the board for the feature to be allowed, to be marketable on that product. And as far as I know, that's basically it. Like, Crossfire is much easier to do. Oh, also, I forgot to write one thing here. Requires SLI bridge for GTX 900 and older. Requires high bandwidth SLI bridge for GTX 10 series. Requires NVLink bridge for RTX 20 and 30 series. So there's a lot more requirements for SLI. It's far more restrictive in terms of the requirements. Requires Crossfire bridge for R9 200. No, that's not right. We'll say HD 7000 and older series. So, R9 200 or 290X and newer no longer require the bridge. So they started using PCIe. So basically, they used to do the Potara fusion like Nvidia, but after starting with the 290X, they started doing the Gogeta fusion dance style for Crossfire X. That's the way I always thought about it, you know, using Dragon Ball Z references. So Crossfire X today is more like Gogeta. SLI is like Vegito. So you got Potara fusion earrings. Here you just do a fusion dance, and it's far more it's far more lenient. Oh, the other thing too is you could even crossfire like low end, like look, like we're crossfiring like mid-range GPUs. So there was no limitation on the type of GPU that you could crossfire, as long as you had the bridge, or as long as they were of the same chip. That customer base does not care burn through component speed for it. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I guess you're talking about the cost of SLI? I don't know. Alright, well, we're kind of at the end, so hopefully that kind of clears up any sort of mystery on what it takes to run these older multi-GPU feature sets. So I always thought SLI and Crossfire were cool. It always looked cool to have 2 GPUs in the computer rather than 1 GPU in the computer. Like someone said earlier, it was like a huge flex. Yeah, it was definitely a flex because there's something about the two GPUs just look so much cooler in a system than just 1 GPU. It is certainly a thing of a different time, though. But I like multi-GPU. I've been a fan. I've been using multi-GPU even after SLI died. I still do multi-GPU. Now, I don't do SLI multi-GPU, but I do multi-GPU. And we do multi-vendor GPU. But hopefully you guys found this somewhat entertaining or educational. But that's basically all I had. GeForce GTX 1080 SLI with an FX 8350 and 32 gigs of DDR3. We're using the ROG SLI solid bridge, the 3-way SLI bridge. Hold on, put this, there you go. Republic of Gamers 990FX Crosshair 5 Formula Z motherboard. One of the few motherboards that still stands that has that SLI license. Alright, well, that's probably going to do it for this live stream. I will try, I need to fix my Haswell system. I got to figure out why my Windows doesn't boot on Haswell. But we will probably be back with Haswell on the next gaming live stream. I'm going to try to set that up. I want that SLI on the Intel to see how that does compared to this FX 8350. I expect it to do better, but I still expect it to be a massive CPU bottleneck nonetheless, just because these modern games are just too much. But we will see how the Intel does with the SLI 1080s. The next stream, I'm not sure when. It's not going to be tomorrow. Well, okay, tomorrow there will be a live stream. But if you're new to the channel, we do a weekly show every Thursdays called Tech Thursdays. So that will be tomorrow. So if you want to tune in to the Tech Thursdays live stream, it'll be the same time tomorrow. So that is 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. And whatever that is in UTC time. But anyway, that's tomorrow. So there won't be any gaming live stream tomorrow. Instead, we'll be talking about stuff like Nova Lake. That's going to be a big topic. Zen 6. New hardware. We're going to be talking about new hardware tomorrow instead of old hardware. And then on the weekend, there will be another live stream. And it will probably feature the Intel i7 4770K with a Z870 GD65 gaming, which I'm holding right here from MSI. So I just got to figure out why my Windows doesn't want to boot up on this motherboard, even though it boots up on a newer motherboard. So I got to figure out what's going on there. But otherwise, that's going to be it. Stay tuned for that. If you want to see how the Intel 4th Gen Haswell i7 handles a GeForce 1080 SLI and these modern games, stay tuned for that. That'll probably be the next one. Then the one after that, we're slowly moving up the stack. I'll just put it that way. We're slowly moving up. We're not going to go all the way to like modern today computers. So don't expect anything like that. But I'm going to try to stay on that DDR3 train as long as possible. As that, well, it's like staying on the sinking Titanic. You got to stay on the ship as long as possible. We got to stay on that DDR3 train until the last stop. So, I refuse to give up on DDR3, even though despite all the performance issues that we've seen with this legacy platform, we're going to see if the Intel Haswell has enough potential to prove that DDR3 is still relevant in 2026, because 8350 certainly proved that it's not really all that relevant. I mean, it's relevant if you want to just read emails and watch YouTube videos, but if you want to play games and modern games, it's not really relevant. So we'll see if the i7 can do better. But Haswell's it, man. Haswell's the pinnacle of DDR3. So all our hopes and dreams go with the i7 4770K. Because 8350 is looking like Vegeta right now. It has a tag out. We need to bring some of that Goku in here, if you know what I'm saying. So stay tuned for that this weekend. As always, guys, if you like this open, free-form discussion here with the chat, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. I forgot to end the poll. People are saying they want to see a Crossfire X build. So we'll do Crossfire X. We'll definitely do Crossfire X. So 82% of you said you want to see a Crossfire X build. And 18% said no. So we are going to be doing Crossfire X. So stay tuned for that. But we are going to do SLI. I'm not done with SLI yet. So we're going to be doing SLI with Intel. And then we're probably going to try to see what is the limiting factor here. So meaning I want to know what is the limit of the GTX 1080 SLI. At what point do I go from being always CPU bottlenecked to always only GPU bottlenecked? So I'm waiting to see at what point can my CPU remove the CPU bottleneck, and now my 1080 SLI finally has to be retired. So anyway, guys, if you're interested in that, stay tuned, because we're going to be doing a lot of live streams focusing on this subject. And then we will probably circle back with Crossfire X in the future. So, as always, thanks for supporting the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, take care, and I'll see you guys tomorrow on Tech Thursdays. Thanks for tuning in.